Welcome to the 2025 State Education Seminar presented by Prisma Health. My name is David Oracle, Chair of the Chamber, and I want to welcome every one of you here this morning to take part in the education update that we're going to get this morning. Before we get started, I'd like to ask Reverend Leslie for the invocation.
Let's pray. Father in heaven, we are so thankful today for this opportunity to come together as civic and community leaders and educators in the great city of Sumter, South Carolina, and throughout this county. Thank you for the Chamber. Thank you for Prisma Health, our sponsors. We're grateful for our keynote speaker, Dr. Weaver, and her staff for being here with us this morning. And we ask that your blessing would be upon all of us as we engage today to learn more about what we can do to improve the quality of life for our students, whether they be in public or private schools here in Sumter County. Thank you for this great church, its pastor and members for opening their doors. Bless us all and keep us in your care. In the name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Now I want to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I want to thank Christ Community Church for hosting. We appreciate the great partnership that we have with you guys. I want to thank Sisters Catering for the wonderful breakfast. I want to say a couple of special thanks. One to Prisma Health, presenting sponsor, couldn't do it without you. Chamber board members, members of the city and county representatives, as well as our strategic partners and our shareholder members. We also want to thank the Sumter leadership team for being here. At this time, I'd like to invite the Prisma Health Brent, market CEO Jennifer, to say a few words.
It's a pleasure to be here with the Sumter Chamber of Commerce and the Feed Your Mind series. I'm Jennifer Montgomery. I am the market CEO for Prisma Health here in the Midlands. At Prisma Health, we know that good health is more than just hospitals. It's about the strength of the community itself. And just like healthcare, education is a cornerstone of that strength. When our students thrive, our families thrive, and our workforce thrives. I'm excited to hear how State Superintendent for Education Ellen Weaver is giving nearly 789,000 students across the Palomino State the tools they need to succeed. Superintendent Weaver knows that when we invest in our children, we invest in the future of Sumter and the future of our state. I couldn't be happier to be here and hear all the exciting news. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I introduce the speaker, I want to draw your attention to the QR code at the front of your pamphlet. At the end of the day's presentation, we'll have the Q&A portion. If you would like to submit a question, please scan the code. Questions are anonymous, so please question away. Today we have the privilege of welcoming a leader who plays a pivotal role in shaping the future of education across our state. It is an honor to introduce State Superintendent Ms. Ellen Weaver, whose dedication to strengthening student success, workforce readiness, and collaboration between schools and industry continues to move South Carolina forward. So please join me in giving a warm Sumter welcome to the Superintendent Ms. Ellen Weaver.
Sumter County. It is so good to be with you today on this foggy fall Friday. How's that for a triple F? But I think our hearts are going to be bright with the news that we have to share today, and I hope that I can send you out into your weekend energized and encouraged for the work that is ahead. Because we're here today to talk about literally the most important thing that we could be gathered to talk about, and that is how we are equipping the future of South Carolina to be bold, to be bright, and to be everything that it can possibly be. And as you all know, that starts in the lives of our beautiful South Carolina students. And I have to start by saying that it was such a privilege to be here in Sumter just a week ago with your interim superintendent Gamble and with Principal Wright at Oakland Elementary School for their Veterans Day presentation. There is nothing that will get you more excited about education than to hear the voices of our primary children singing about the country that we all know and love. It was a beautiful celebration of Sumter's incredible commitment to our military families. I know that when we talk about South Carolina as a military-friendly state, Sumter County is leading the way in terms of how you all are looking out for our incredible families of our military members here at Shaw and really all across the Greater Midlands area. So thank you for that. We have a lot of ground to cover today, so let's go ahead and get into the presentation. If we can get our first slide here. What I'm going to try to do is give you a very brief whirlwind tour of our top strategic priorities here in South Carolina and how we are going to accomplish this vision of every South Carolina student graduating college, career, or military ready. But we know as business leaders that we have to set time-bound, measurable goals if we are going to know that we are making progress towards that aspirational vision. And so our state Board of Education, and we're so pleased to have your representative, Dr. Rosa Dingle, here today with us. Yes, and she's doing a great job. Our State Board of Education and our Education Oversight Committee have come together and unanimously passed what we call our 2030 Moonshot, which is we want at least 75% of students in South Carolina to be at or above grade level by the year 2030. And that is a huge lift. Those of you in education will quickly tell you, and you understand that it is very difficult to turn around trajectories. But what I'm here to tell you today is not only is it possible, it's actually being done. And you all have such a beautiful example of that right here in South Carolina in Sumter with Liberty Steen. It is absolutely amazing what that school is doing with our most challenged families, our poorest students. And what I'm here to tell you over and over and over again is that poverty is a challenge, but it is not an excuse. Our children in poverty are every bit as smart and as capable and as bright as any students anywhere. And our South Carolina students compete not just at a global or at a national level, but at a global level when we prepare them with the foundational skills to meet that. So let's go to the next slide real quick and just look at quickly Education Governance 101. There's a lot of cooks in the kitchen when it comes to education governance. We start with our federal government, the General Assembly. I have to say I'm so thankful to Senator Zell and any other members of our General Assembly who are here for their partnership in this education work, because many of the things that I'm going to talk to you about this morning would not be possible without their consistent support and funding and passing of policy that helps us implement these priorities. We, of course, have my job, the State Superintendent of Education, which is established in the state constitution, and I oversee the State Department of Education. We have the State Board of Education, which is also established in the South Carolina Constitution, 17 members across the whole state on that board. We have our Education Oversight Committee, which sees our state accountability system for our public schools. Of course, we have the local district board of trustees. And I always like to camp out on that for just a minute because I want to emphasize how important that local board of trustees is. South Carolina has historically been a local control state, and that means that there's a lot of authority that lives at that local board level. As you all know, your local board hires and fires your superintendent. You all are in the midst of a superintendent search right now. And what I would ask you all to do and to think about as we go through this presentation today is how will your next superintendent support the vision that we have for all students in South Carolina? Because I think it's really, really incredibly important that we have that alignment. And then, of course, our governor also helps appoint a member of the State Board of Education, currently our chair. But interestingly enough, in South Carolina's governance model, the governor does not have as large a role in education, since I also am a constitutionally elected officer, just like the governor. So it's kind of an interesting governance system that we have here in the state. But next slide, please. This is just a quick look at our funding here in South Carolina. Most people are stunned to learn that we're spending at this point over $14 billion a year on K-12 education. And you can see there the rough breakdown of federal, state, and local funding. Many people are surprised to find out that the federal funding is a relatively small share, about 8 to 9% of our total K-12 funding. The rest of it is a pretty equal split between state and local when you look at the statewide average. But again, that varies widely district to district. We have some of our districts like Beaufort, Charleston, Greenville that are more urban, that have a much larger tax base, and so the local share in those districts is going to be much larger than, say, in some of our smaller rural communities, where the state share is much larger proportionally because of the lower index of tax-paying ability. And so we see a lot of variation across the state. And when you look at that revenue per pupil, which is now almost $20,000 per student, again, that's the statewide average. That varies widely between districts. Our lowest funded district, or districts, would be the 2 Dillon districts, which are about $12,000 per student. And then we have some districts in the Midlands that at this point are over $30,000 revenue per pupil. And so there's a wide variation, but again, this gives you a sense of the averages. And then our charter schools, which are public schools, they're regulated, and they also take the state test, just like our other public schools do. They're at about just over $12,000 per student. They don't receive transportation funds, and they don't receive infrastructure funds like our traditional public school students do, and they also don't have access to the local share of taxes. So that is entirely state funded, that number. Next slide, please. I want to leave you with the idea, which is fact, that our General Assembly has made significant investments in public education over the last 6 to 7 years. Since 2018, 2019, the General Assembly has appropriated almost $2 billion in new state investment. That is no federal money, no local money. That is state-only money. And the vast majority of that investment has gone to support our teachers. We know, both common sense and research tell us, that the #1 influencer of the quality of a student's education is a great teacher in the classroom. And we know that if we are going to attract and retain the very best and brightest of South Carolina's teaching profession, that we have to pay them like the professionals that they are. And so we have taken, we have seen a 52% increase in the starting teacher salary here in South Carolina since 2018, 2019. From $32,000 to $48,500, where we are this year. And in my budget next year, along with the governor, we'll be requesting that the General Assembly take that minimum starting salary to $50,500, which keeps us well in line with the Southeastern average. So I want you to be encouraged. South Carolina is now competitive on the pay scale with the Southeastern average. I think that is fantastic news. And when you talk to our districts that are now on border states in Georgia and North Carolina, we actually are starting to attract teachers from North Carolina and Georgia because our pay is competitive, and that's great news for students in South Carolina. Next slide, please. This is just a report that we did that you might be interested in about how we continue to shape policy
along the lines of recruiting and retaining those teachers. And one of the things that I'm most passionate about is how we create strategic compensation models. So yes, we continue to raise salaries across the board, but the fact is that the step and lane system that we've been using for about the last 100 years is very outdated. If we're going to attract the best and the brightest into classrooms, we have to create professional pathways for teachers, and we have to recognize excellence where it exists. And so one of my big priorities budget-wise this year is going to be asking the General Assembly to work with me to create a pilot program that would create different certificate designations for teachers, the top one being a mentor teacher who is paid more. Because let me tell you, I have never had a teacher tell me that they became a great teacher because of the third-year pedagogy class in their education preparation program. They always tell me it was another teacher who mentored them, it was a principal who coached them. It's that human element that really makes the difference, and that's what we need to do. Dr. Dingell and I were talking, we have retired educators in South Carolina right now who are sitting on the sidelines. And we need to get those teachers back in the game, and we need them in our schools of greatest need. And so differentiated compensation, I believe, is one strategy that we can have in our toolbox to help that happen. Another thing that we're doing here that you may have read a few articles about is the strategic compensation pilot that we are running. It's a $5 million program that has been funded for 2 years now. We just had the first round of announcements, where teachers in elementary and middle school who are seeing the greatest growth on their math and reading scores for students are actually given a one-time bonus at the end of the year. We have had teachers, I think the average bonus was about $6,500 this year for the teachers who are participating in that program. The highest one, I think, was $26,000. I mean, like, that's real money. And the teachers who won those high awards, I mean, were absolutely blown away, paying off debt, going on a well-deserved vacation, and of course, a lot of them, because they have a teacher's heart, are reinvesting that money in their classrooms too, which is just absolutely amazing. But again, I think that this is another tool in our toolbox to make sure that we're attracting the very best and the very brightest in the South Carolina classrooms. Next slide. Part of the work that we did was laying out the profile of a prepared South Carolina educator. What I have found in this education work is that you have to start with clarity of mission, vision, and purpose, and then you have to relentlessly align your resources around accomplishing that vision. And so that includes your human capital. We have to know what we're aiming for in the profile of a teacher. We've had a profile of the South Carolina graduate for a number of years at this point, and we believe that the same thing is so important for our teachers. This is just a quick look at our education ecosystem of note here. So South Carolina, you'll see since 2019-20, our student population is actually growing, and that is very different than other states. We're an in-migration state, and so we do continue to see our student population rise. What we also are seeing is that since COVID, and it was happening before COVID, but it's really been accelerated since the pandemic, there are growing variations within where parents are choosing to send their children to school. And so we've had massive increases percentage-wise in the number of students who are served in our traditional brick and mortar and virtual public charter schools. We've seen a big increase in homeschool as well as independent school students. And statewide, we've actually seen a 2% reduction in our traditional public school students. And again, that's a very localized phenomenon. Most of that is happening in our rural communities, because we do have communities that are more urban, like Fort Mill, which is essentially a veteran community of Charlotte now, that are experiencing bananas growth, right? But so it's an uneven picture across the state, but overall, a 2% decline in traditional public school students. But what I hasten to say is that you'll notice that that yellow bar is still the vast majority of our students. And so that's where our time and attention is focused at the Department of Education, is how do we ensure that those 727,653 students are getting a strong Tier 1 foundation, instructional foundation, in every classroom every single day. Next slide, please. This is just a quick look again at the education ecosystem. You see that we have our traditional public schools, our public magnet schools, our public charter schools. We have the Education Scholarship Trust Fund, which is actually kind of a new hybrid variety here in South Carolina, because in addition to allowing parents to choose to send their child to a private school using this money, and it's income qualified, so you have to be of a certain income level or below to qualify for this program here in South Carolina. It also can be used within the traditional public school system. And we have about 30 of our traditional districts that are actually part of this program now. Because what you may not know is that when students transfer between one district and another, oftentimes that tax base is not equal, and so public schools are actually allowed to charge what's called an inter-district transfer fee if they're accepting students from another district. And so the ESDF program can actually be used by a qualified family to pay those inter-district transfer fees. Our traditional public schools and even our charter schools could also offer classes that were sold to families on an a la carte basis. And so this is really, I think, a mechanism that is leading us closer and closer to what I call the education ecosystem of the future, in which students are flexible and their education journey is much more portable than it's ever been in the past. And that's enabled by technology, by families wanting more customization and choice, and just by kind of where we are as a society now. And then of course we have independent schools and homeschool options here in South Carolina too. Next slide, please. So now we're going to get into the real meat of our strategy here at the Department of Education. We already talked about our 2030 moonshot vision of 75% of students at or above grade level achievement. So how are we going to get there? Well, let's talk through the next slide, which is our, well, here's where we are now. Let's start with that. So currently, as of the 24-25 school year, 60% of our 3rd to 8th grade students in South Carolina are considered proficient in reading. And like I said, we still have a long way to go to get to where we need to be, but I believe that on that journey, we have to celebrate every single bit of progress. And the good news is that the trajectory that we are seeing is all positive in the right direction. We have a 6-point year-over-year growth in literacy this year, which is almost unheard of. And you all may have heard, yes. May have heard of the Mississippi Miracle. Well, we're going to be talking about the South Carolina Surge before you know it, because we have stolen their playbook and we're seeing it work right here in South Carolina. Next slide, please. So this is just breaking it down by grade level, and the thing that I would point out here is that we are seeing the greatest progress, meaning if you look at that dark yellow bar going down from 23-24 to 24-25 in 3rd grade and 4th grade especially, those drops show that the strategy that we are implementing here in South Carolina in the early elementary grades is working. And this is just the leading edge of this data. So let's go to the next slide and talk a little bit about math. So 44% of our students are currently proficient in math. That again was a 2% or 2-point year-over-year growth, which is not as fast as we would like to see it, but it is heading in a positive direction. And what I'll say about math specifically is that this challenge is not unique to South Carolina. Students in the U.S. have been losing ground in math for a number of years now. And so while we know what the science of reading is, and we're implementing the science of reading, there's not really a corollary science of math. But there are states, Alabama, Louisiana, that are doing really great work and showing us the way. And we actually are now in South Carolina implementing a game plan in math, just like we're doing in literacy. And I'm really excited because I believe that's going to rapidly accelerate our math growth, just like we're starting to see that rapid acceleration in reading. Next slide, please. So this is, again, just a quick look at our college and career readiness and graduation rates statewide. The number that I'd like to point you to specifically is the significant growth that we have seen over the last 5 years on that second one, career ready. 73% of our students who are leaving a South Carolina high school are now designated as being career ready. And we still have much more work to do here. But that's something that we are firmly focused on at the Department of Education, and not just at the Department of Education, but really statewide, with how are we ensuring that we are working with business to ensure that our students are given access to the CTE opportunities that they need, and that those CTE opportunities are high value. So the credentials that they are getting actually are the employable skills that we know that our business and industry is looking for. And so we continue to do more work about that, around that, but we're very excited to see that upward trajectory. Next slide. So here we are with our department strategic plan, and I'm going to try to walk you very briefly through 4 of our key strategic priorities. How are we going to hit that 2030 goal? We know what the goal is. We've seen where we currently are. How are we going to make sure that we get to where we need to be? So let's go through this very quickly. The first slide is all about leading the nation in ELA, math, and civics readiness. So let's talk a little bit, next slide, about what our journey has been in South Carolina over time with the science of reading. So how are we achieving those reading gains? And it starts with teacher knowledge. Our General Assembly came to the table my very first year, my first budget request. I asked for $40 million to do training for every K-3 teacher in South Carolina, and I'm so excited to tell you that as of the end of this school year, all of our K-3 teachers will be fully trained in the science of reading. That's over 20,000 teachers. And what we're hearing from our teachers who have gone through this very intensive 2-year development is that they now feel empowered, that they have the tools in their toolbox to understand what to do when their students are struggling. And I can't imagine, as a teacher, a feeling of more helplessness than seeing a student struggle and not knowing what to do to help them. And that is one of the most joyful things that I have heard from our teachers over the last few years, is that I didn't know what to do before, but now that I know better, I can do better. And I can actually help that struggling student overcome. I know how to diagnose that particular struggle that they're having with their reading and help them overcome it. And it's way too simplified to say that the science of reading is just about phonics, but it really is grounded in phonics. It is so important that we get back to this. And it's interesting because now we have MRI of brain science that shows us that there are 4 distinct areas in our brain that have to get connected in order for us to be a proficient reader. And that's what this science of reading is called letters training does for our teachers, is it teaches them how to help students connect those 4 different parts of their brain. And y'all, it's working. The fact is that the teachers, or the students I should say, who were kindergartners, when we began this letters training, they haven't even showed up in the testing data yet, which tells me that the strategy is already working. They'll be tested as 3rd graders for the first time this year. So I think we're going to continue to see this acceleration and really this empowerment of our teachers to do what they love and what they're called to do. So moving to the next slide here, this is again just looking at the year-over-year decrease. So the lowest indicator of does not meet on our state test, we saw a 43% year-over-year decrease in the number of students who were identified this year at that lowest level. And that's 9,000 real kids who are now reading better than they would have otherwise. And I have students who remained, those 9,000 students who remained in that category actually went through interventions over the summer, and there were only about 1,000 total of those students who were retained without a good cause exception going forward. And that is just such a joyful thing. If our students have a strong foundation in reading, they can do anything. So next slide, please. And this is just a slide we actually have on the wall. I figured folks in Sumter County would love to know this, but the native daughter of Sumter County, her quote is on the wall of the Department of Education, "The whole world opened to me when I learned to read." And this gift of reading is the foundational skill, the gift that we have to give our students if they're going to be successful, not only in school, but in life. We hear about the rapid, accelerating pace of technology, and how we talk kind of at a almost trite level sometimes about it's important to be a lifelong learner. Well, it actually is important to be a lifelong learner. In this economy of technology, we all are going to have to continue to upskill ourselves, and that starts with being a strong reader. So we're so excited for this journey here in South Carolina. Going quickly ahead to math, let's go to the next slide. We also are shifting how we work with math. And so When I came into the Department of Education, there was one person statewide who was handling math policy for the whole state. We now have an entire team of people who are dedicated to math policy. And they're not just sitting in a central office in Columbia. They are actually out in schools coaching teachers, working with principals, using the same strategy of high-quality instructional materials, high-quality professional learning, instructional coaching, and then also high-dose tutoring for students that we know are going to really close those math gaps for our students who are struggling most and accelerate the pace of change that we're hoping to see. So that's our Palmetto Math Project. We're also looking at civics education. And I can't imagine a more exciting time to be talking about civics education than approaching America's 250th birthday this next year. And I'm personally passionate about this. I'm a frustrated political science major who wished that I was a history major. But we have such an opportunity, I think, in this time of division, to teach our students about the American ideals that unify us and bring us together. And so what you see over here is what we call our Palmetto Pioneer poster. We have 5 or 6 of these that we have already released, and we're going to continue to release 2 every month between now and the SC 250 next summer. But this is William Jasper and how he became the Palmetto State. And it tells his story, it tells his lasting legacy, and then it also touches on a virtue or a life skill that we want our students to have that his story exemplifies. So we have a number of these that we've rolled out. I would encourage you to visit our Palmetto Civics Project at palmettocivicsproject.com. There are so many free resources that we are providing to our schools as well as to the larger community. So any homeschool, independent school, anyone who's interested in South Carolina will have access to the Palmetto Patriots or the Palmetto Pioneers Project, as well as many of the other instructional resources that we have. And if you'll go to the next slide, we also are so excited that on December the 2nd in Columbia at the R2I2 Center, the Richland 2 Center in Northeast Columbia. So if you're in the area and want to stop by, we're going to be unveiling the new South Carolina African American History Calendar. The theme this year is revolutionary. And so we're going to have incredible student performances. We're going to have food made by different culinary programs that our students make, and we're going to unveil our beautiful new calendar. The one this year, which again I would encourage you to just go visit in your free time, is all about the families of the Emanuel 9, since this year was the 10th anniversary of that tragedy here. And what I will tell you is, in reading the stories of these families, I think you will be so uplifted by the hope and the resilience that they express in their daily lives, and the legacy of love that they carry on from the members of their family. So anyway, a wonderful resource again that we put out every year from the Department of Education. Next slide. So we're going to go much quicker now. Second strategy is all about those CTE life skills. We have got to connect our classroom learning with career relevance. And I know so many of our students, my brother was one of them. I was a bookworm, but he needed to learn with that hands-on application. And that's really what this is all about. So if you go to the next slide, we have different career clusters that we are currently supporting. I'm excited to share that, again, since 2018-2019, we have more than doubled the number of students who have received a national or state recognized credential. And this is work that is ongoing because, again, we know the economy continues to evolve, and we have to keep our business partners at the table to make sure that we are keeping our CTE education in the state relevant. Next slide, please. We also always talk about, when I'm talking with business leaders, the life skills, the hard skills, the durable skills that our students need to have to be not just successful in school, but to be great employees and be successful in life. And so we have our character and resilience education program that has many different free resources that we are providing to districts. One of those free resources is the Medal of Honor curriculum, which again is about the 6 patriotic virtues that unite us as Americans, and that we believe every student should know and embody in order to be not just a successful student, but a successful human being as they go forward into their future. Next slide, please. We also know, if you all have not read the book, The Anxious Generation from Jonathan Haidt, I highly, highly recommend it to you. We are facing a mental health crisis with our young people, and our students and teachers who are on the front lines every day, I think would tell you this in the drop of a heartbeat. And well, I know these are small slides, kind of hard to see the data, but the main point that I want to leave you with is that when you look between 2010 and 2012 on both of these slides, you see a hockey stick in the data, a dramatic increase in depression, anxiety, and suicide rates for adolescents. Next slide, please. And we know that a lot of this is attributable to technology overuse. And while we can't solve that problem for the entire community or society, what we can do is set a hard line in our schools. And I'm proud to tell you that South Carolina is leading the way in restoring freedom to focus in our classrooms. We know that our students, it's not about what we take away in terms of restricting access to cell phones. We have a bell-to-bell policy that says during the entire school day, your phone has to be off and away. And we allow districts flexibility in terms of how they implemented that off and away. It can be stored in the locker, it can be stored in the backpack, it can be stored in the yonder pouch. There's a lot of ways districts can implement it. And we also left flexibility for districts in terms of the progressive discipline that is attached to this. But what we did tell our districts is that the point of this policy is not to take students out of the classroom. That's the problem right now, is that students who aren't chronically absent, many of them are chronically absent sitting right in the classroom when they're looking at their phones. And so the point is, take away the technology out of the classroom, don't take the student out of the classroom. We need them there getting instruction. And ultimately, what this is doing is giving our students freedom to focus on their learning journey, freedom to focus on building friendships. What I will tell you is that I have had so many teachers who have told me it has been the best school year of my life, not having to fight with my students over their cell phones. And in the lunchroom, it's really loud. It's really loud, but like in the most joyful possible way. Instead of having a room full of zombies, we have kids who are talking to each other, who are bringing games to school, who are bringing Legos to school, and actually engaging with each other over lunch. So it's really beautiful. If you want to feel really old, talk to a high school student, and I know some of you have high school students at home and they roll their eyes at you all the time, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. But there was an article about a young lady down in Beaufort who, because they had to keep their phones off and away, didn't have access to her camera. And so she discovered this amazing technology of disposable cameras. And so she started taking the disposable camera to school, and she just talked about how much more that allowed her and her friends to be in the moment, because it wasn't about instant gratification and posting the picture for likes and comparisons and all of that. She said it was straight up joy because they were in the moment enjoying themselves and just being kids again. And that really is our goal, is we have got to get away from the phone-based childhood and back to the play-based childhood that we all knew and loved. And that's what the next slide is about, is that these devices that we are putting in front of children, it is actually a medical addiction. The dopamine pathways that are being triggered in the brain every time they look at one of those devices is actual addiction. And I think if we're honest as adults, we have to acknowledge that we're addicted too. And so just imagine our young children, we know their brains are not going to be fully developed until they're 25 years old. Dealing with what they're dealing with. Is it any wonder that we are struggling with anxiety and depression and suicide and other mental health challenges in our schools? And so, again, one of my budget requests this year is going to be for a statewide implementation of the Screen Strong curriculum. This curriculum was developed by a mom who's a nurse, so she has a medical background, understands the science, has done the research, but her own son was caught in a video gaming addiction. And thankfully he's on the other side of it now, but she said even to see him now, you wouldn't see anything was wrong, but there are just pieces of his social development that never happened. And she was smarter for her younger children, but she didn't know what she was dealing with the first time around. And so her passion now is supporting other families. And that's what this is about. This is about parent education. This is about teacher education. But most importantly, it's about student education. Because when you teach students about the brain science of what technology is doing to their brain, our students are smart. They get it. And I will tell you, I truly believe that this technology addiction issue is the smoking issue of our day. And I think we're going to look back 10, 20 years from now and say, how in the world did we ever allow our students unfettered access to these devices? We have kids who are coming into kindergarten and into pre-K who don't have gross motor skills, fine motor skills. Some of them aren't even potty trained. This is what our teachers are dealing with. And if we as a community don't step up and take action, then shame on us. When we know better, we have to do better. All right, next slide, please. And it's all about restoring play. So we also have a partnership where we're offering free resources to districts that will give them the tools that they need to set up before school or after school play clubs. One of the things that we do struggle with, not just here in South Carolina, but across the country since the pandemic, is chronic absenteeism, right? And so this is a way to get kids engaged, wanting to come to school, and also give them the developmental play that they need in order to mature and grow the way that we know that they are capable of. So next slide. Our third strategy is all about leadership effectiveness. Again, I just commend you all for the work you're doing in your superintendent search. If you go to the next slide, we've looked at schools across the state that are what we call our beating the odds schools. These are high poverty schools that are absolutely knocking it out of the park for their students. The common denominator at each of those schools is a strong, visible principal. That principal sets the tone of the entire school building, supports the teachers, makes it a place where great teachers want to stay and work. And so we're going to be really strategic over the next few years in thinking about how we continue to develop our principles. But if you're looking for some great bedtime reading, I highly commend that report to you. Next slide. So this is just a school that gets me really excited. Pinecrest Elementary School. They are 87% pupils in poverty, so Title I school. 3rd to 5th grade student, you'll see it's a majority minority school. Next slide, please. And they're in Greenwood, just for context. So it's a rural school as well. These were their scores for 23 and 24. And you see, not only did they have astronomical growth year over year, but those little dotted blue lines, those are the state averages. They were beating the state averages. And in fact, they were the second highest performing elementary school in the whole state of South Carolina. And again, what I attribute that to is a great principal supporting great teachers. What I heard from those teachers was that the principal and APs were walking the halls every day. Every morning as the teachers were getting ready, their AP would come in and say, hey, what do you need? You need me to go make copies for you? I'll go make copies for you. You focus on what you need to do to be ready for getting those kids where they need to be today. And so that servant leadership mindset is really what it's all about. And I'm so proud to tell you that we have great principals and great teachers who are absolutely crushing it every single day on behalf of their students here in South Carolina. So next slide, please. Our fourth and final strategy is all about community engagement. And as I close, that's why I'm so excited to be here talking to you today. Because we have asked our teachers in our schools to be everything to everybody, and they can't be. A school cannot replace a family. A school cannot replace the larger community. We need every single member of the community rowing in the boat with us, supporting our teachers, mentoring our students, and there are so many opportunities to do that. Next slide, please. We actually have created, this is just a look at some of the needs that our districts have surfaced in terms of they need mentoring help, tutoring help. Our teachers need class help, duty help, family engagement. We know there are so many needs that our districts are currently dealing with. So we have actually created, on the next slide, something that we are calling Project Raise Your Hand. And this is really just a beta site. And the idea behind this is that we want to help connect the supply of volunteers with the demand of need that we know that our schools have. Because I truly believe that we have so many community-minded people who want to get engaged in our schools and may not know what the on-ramp is to get there. And you know, we all write our tax checks every year, and that's really, really important. But the most valuable resource that any of us have is our time. And so we have got to show our students and our teachers that we see them, that we care about them, that we support them in this academic journey. Because we can pay lip service to education and say, well, it's the most important thing. Of course. We all know it's the most important thing, but what are we actually doing to show our personal support for it? And so to all of you who are already engaged in supporting a local school, thank you. Thank you for what you do, because your support and partnership is absolutely invaluable. But let's think about how we can continue to deepen and expand that. One of the things that we've worked on in the department that we haven't rolled out yet, but that we're very eager to roll out, but it has to be in partnership with local communities, because we can't direct and control all of this from the state level. We don't know your local community like you know your local community. But we've developed tutoring training in the science of reading for community members who want to go into a school and be a literacy tutor. So imagine what it would look like if we partnered with a local district, with businesses within that district, with the faith community within that district, to hold maybe a Saturday morning training. You want to be a literacy tutor? Come learn how to be a literacy tutor. I think that that is the number one thing that we as communities can do to help support reaching that goal that it's going to take all of us to work together to help to reach. So finally, on the last slide, I will just say that I take great inspiration from our competing, or I should say complementary state mottos. We have 2 state mottos here in South Carolina, and it's not because we're bipolar. It's just we couldn't choose one because they're both so good. So I said, this is the double helix of our state DNA, right? As South Carolinians, this is who we are. While I breathe, I hope, and prepare in mind and resources. And hope is not wishful thinking. Hope is a confident expectation that the future can be better than the past or the present. But hope knows that it's not going to just happen by sitting around and wishing for it. Hope knows it has to roll up its sleeves and get to work. And that's where the prepared in mind and resources comes in. That's the hard work that is happening every day in classrooms across South Carolina. And that's the work that I invite you into today. And I tell our students, if you want to remember who we are as South Carolinians, it's hope propels hard work. So we're working hard on behalf of our students, on behalf of our communities. Again, I'm so grateful for what you do every day to propel this community forward, and I'm really excited for the future of education in Sumter County. Thank you again for having me today. All right, I think we're going to do some Q&A if we have time. We good? Okay, perfect.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you, David. Great presentation.
Thank you. It's a joy to be with you at Oakland last week, too. Yeah, that was awesome.
With that. The QR code, there were people that put out information and asking questions, and we're going to direct those questions to the superintendent. My name is Lefford Fade. I work for the city of Sumter, and I'm also the chair of the education committee. Glad to be here, proud to serve. Ma'am, in your honest opinion, what is the biggest disadvantage in today's public education system?
That's tough because there are certainly a lot of challenges that we face, but if I had the ability to wave a magic wand and change one thing, it would be adult mindset. Because our adults in the system have to believe that our kids are capable. And that is the common denominator that I see in these Title I schools, these beating the odds schools that I was telling you about, is that these principals don't accept excuses. They get the job done. Now, along with high expectations, we're not asking people to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, right? We know we have to provide the support that those expectations require. But I think fundamentally it starts with the adult mindset of belief that our children can achieve and that we expect them to achieve and that we are going to support them to achieve.
I think you answered the big, hairy, audacious goal for the school system, but there's a part of that was an additional question. What is a project you can complete without money, workforce, or even legal limitations? What can you do without those?
Without those resources. I think that the community engagement piece is really the part that it's just about us giving our time, right? That's us giving our personal resources. And so I just think that the power of mentorship, Dr. Dingle and I were talking about how every student needs to have that one person in their life that they know care about them. And thankfully, many of our students do have that with a figure in their home, but we know that some of them don't. And so I think that that would be the single most transformative thing that we could do with that money is ensure that every student in South Carolina has a mentor.
Thank you. Sumter has great teachers and we're seeing some progress, but the community is still concerned about leadership stability and public trust in the district. How can the state support Sumter in strengthening governance and helping our schools move forward?
It's a great question, and I think that the word that really triggers my attention in that question is trust. Everything in education is built on trust, and trust starts with transparency and great communication. If there is one thing that I have learned over and over and over again in this job is that it is not possible for me to over-communicate. If I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times, but it has to be said because there are people who didn't hear it that first time, right? And so I think that that communication piece is absolutely critical. In terms of what the department can do to help support that journey, again, I'm going to go back to training for local boards. We talked earlier about how important that local board governance is, and I think that qualifications and training for those local boards are so important. And so just a few weeks ago, we started a brand new initiative at the Department of Education where we're inviting all local board members to come to the Department of Education for a half-a-day training. And this is really a pilot program. We're trying to figure out how to make it work, what our board members really need, what their felt needs are, as well as what we have identified needs are in terms of fiscal management and oversight, some of the challenges that we have seen in some of our school districts. And so that's something that we're very eager to continue to deepen our work on at the Department of Education. But I'll just be very honest, that's not something historically that the department has done, and I think that that's a role that we really need to step into.
Thank you, ma'am, for that. How can charter schools and traditional public schools in Sumter collaborate more effectively to support student achievement across our county?
That's a great question. I am not as familiar maybe as I should be with how that current collaboration is happening, so I'm going to be hopeful that there is collaboration happening already, but I am a firm believer in the idea that a rising tide lifts all ships. And so when we see one sector or one school in our community being successful, what I would encourage is for other schools, be that a charter school, be that a traditional public school, to go to that school and say, what's the secret sauce? Like, what are you doing? You're working with the same students I'm working with, and you're getting better outcomes. So you're showing that we can get better outcomes, right? What is your secret sauce for success? And I think that having that humility, again, as adults in the system, to realize that like none of us have all the answers, and we all have to be open to learning, I think is probably the best posture that we could take to see that kind of cross public school collaboration.
In my opinion, we're doing great. But what are you hearing from industry leaders about what they're looking for in developing the workforce?
I think a lot of it comes back to those durable skills, those life skills. People who will pay attention, who will look you in the eye, who carry themselves with commitment and integrity and show up on time. These are all pretty foundational life skills that I think many of us were blessed to learn growing up at home, that it seems like a lot of our students may not be as exposed to today. And so that's the whole idea behind our character and resilience education initiative that we're working on here. We want to provide our schools and districts with free resources that they can access, and it not be one more thing that they tack on to the end of the day, but resources that they can actually infuse throughout the day. So whether that's in a civics class like the Palmetto Pioneers poster, or whether that's in a homeroom, or whether that's in a reading class where you're reading something that has to do with character education, right? So in addition to the obvious things that our employers say they have to have, which is, basic literacy and math and things like that, I really think what I hear the most often from business leaders is that need for those durable life skills.
Love that. How can Sumter better collaborate with the state on improving teacher recruitment and retention?
That's a great question too. Wow, you guys are on it. So I think that what I'm most excited about are these teacher pilot pay projects that I talked to you about, the strategic compensation. and then the career ladders. And so for the strategic compensation pilot, I don't know off of the top of my head if Sumter did participate in that previously, but we have identified some additional funding for that, and so we will be re-sending out that application process for districts to raise their hand to be a part of. And so if Sumter is not a part of that, I would encourage you all to do that, because again, I think that rewarding our most effective teachers is how we keep them in the classroom. And then the same thing for the career ladders. So that is a budget request that I'm asking for this coming January. So we won't know until the end of this next legislative session if it's actually funded or not. But once it is funded, there will be a competitive process for districts to participate in that. So I would encourage Sumter to be at the front of the line and asking to be part of that project.
Awesome, ma'am. This is the final question right now. How will recent legislative changes in education funding affect districts like Sumter?
So that's a good question. I'm not certain if they're talking about state changes or federal changes. We haven't had a lot of changes at the state level. There was a little bit of a tweak at the end of last session around virtual charter schools, but really funding for state level funding has been pretty stable, and again, as we saw earlier, has actually increased here in South Carolina. I do know that there has been a lot of uncertainty in the headlines about what's going on in DC, and what I want to say about that is that the programs that the federal Department of Education administers, those programs actually predate the Department of Education. So IDEA, which is the funding and regulation around special education, as well as the title funds, which are the funds that support our low-income students, those programs actually, in order to change that, it would require congressional changing. So changes in the congressional budget process and all of that. So my message to educators across the state has been that, like, we're not gonna get whipped up by the headlines, because like we know that the media gets paid by the click. And so they want to stir up controversy and they want to get people riled up, and that's the business model. And I get it, I'm not faulting them for it, I'm just saying that's the reality of it, right? But here in South Carolina, we need to keep calm and educate on. We've got to stay focused on the mission in front of us, which is what's happened with those students in that classroom every single day. And if there are changes that impact us at the federal level, which thankfully there have not been to this point, all of our federal funds are flowing just like they've always flowed. If there are those changes, then we're going to work through that together as educators with our General Assembly, because our commitment to our special education students and to our low-income students here in South Carolina is ironclad. We'll figure that out, and we'll figure that out together. But for the meantime, don't get caught up in the headlines. Keep focused on the real work.
Thank you, Superintendent.
Again, I want to thank every one of you for being here this morning. Very well articulated where we are with our education at the local and state level. It looks like we're going in the right direction. So keep up the good work, and good things is coming. One thing I got something out of it. So I went to Sumter County Career Center. You mentioned teachers make a huge impact on students. And I can remember, I'm 35 years ago, I can remember a teacher that really changed my life, and I can really give that teacher credit for me being here today. So that is very, again, thank you for that. Before we close, I want to take a few minutes to check out the upcoming program and events that's listed in the program. Chamber works very hard with the community and getting things together for people to just get together and network. So please take a moment and look at our programs and events coming up. We also value your opinion and the feedback regarding today's seminar. So in your email today, you will receive a quick 2 to 3 minute survey. Please take the time to fill that survey out. Your impact tells us what we need to do going forward on these types of events and communications to the community. So Again, thank you. Have a great Friday, great weekend, and again, thank you for being here and sharing the market with us. Thank you.